We are living in a time when everything seems to be overly complicated, especially when it comes to health and wellness. We need to get enough sleep, exercise, eat a healthy, balanced diet, and work on our mental health and emotional well-being. Okay, 4 basic things. That can't be so difficult. But wait, how much sleep is enough sleep? How much is too much sleep? Exercise? Okay, there is Pilates, yoga, and weightlifting. Oh, but then there is hot yoga, or yoga mixed with alcohol? Yoga that involves belly tapping and deep breathing? Running is good. Oh, no, wait, running is bad for your knees. Weightlifting is good, but cross-training is better. You should get a trainer. Nah, you don't need a trainer, just watch YouTube. You should join a gym. Or you can save money and get on-demand workouts for home. But which program do you choose? Eggs are good for you. Nope, eggs are bad. Milk helps strengthen your bones. Milk has too many added hormones and is actually really bad for you. Try almond milk. No coconut milk. Nope. Oat milk is best. Soy is good. Soy is bad. Want to lose weight? You need to do the keto diet. Keto isn't healthy. You need to fast. But intermittent fasting is best. Every time I turn around, another celebrity is coming out with a cookbook or a Get Fit book. When I sit down to meditate, no wonder I can't clear my head when all of these uncertainties are bombarding me. We need to get back to the basics of all things health and wellness. Today, we are having a conversation with licensed dietitian Amanda Esquivel about getting back to the basics of nutrition. Not only is she a licensed dietitian who has worked with patients who are battling cancer and other diseases, she also owns a consulting business called Bare Nutrition. Amanda's education, life experiences, work experiences, and her 5 nieces and nephews have prepared her for a career in health and wellness. We hope you enjoy this episode and take some notes, because what we put in our bodies matters. It is time to get back to the basics. So, it is time to chat. Hi, I'm Tanya Friend, and I've been a speech and language pathologist for 13 years. I am also the owner and director of Chatterbox Speech Therapy, a speech therapy practice that serves the children and community in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
And I'm Corey Walker. I've been working with children for nearly 20 years, and I was a pioneering app developer in the area of speech and language pathology. We all have gifts in this life, and mine is knowing what makes children tick. Parenting in the modern age comes with uncharted challenges. We'll be bringing you discussions with experts in childhood development and introducing some tough questions and topics.
Together, with our experience and knowledge, we have created this podcast to help you with your child's development and wellness. So, listen up.
Because it's time to chat.
I'm so excited that we are getting to do this and have this conversation. Today we have with us Amanda Esquivel, who is a registered dietitian. Is that correct?
Yes.
And who works with pediatrics along with other age groups, but she's here today to kind of answer some questions and help our families with serious topics of food and nutrition and helping our little ones get the best that they can with what they're eating. So thank you for being here, Amanda.
Thank you for having me, Tanya.
Of course. So you have your own consulting business, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. My company is called Bare Nutrition, LLC. That's
so awesome. And when I found out more about your consulting business that I was very excited you started, in our conversations, one of the things that really spoke to us was that your tagline is getting back to the basics of nutrition. So what does that mean for you? What does that look like?
So without getting too scientific, because I'm a scientist, the science behind nutrition is macronutrients. So your carbohydrates, your fats, and your proteins. But what that means is your carbohydrates are your fruits, your vegetables. Your proteins are essentially your meats and your vegetarian sources of protein. So things like beans, legumes, and things like nuts. So peanuts, almonds, things like that, peanut butter. almond butter, and then soy, and then your fats. So, and those can be animal and plant-based. So people like to do things like say, oh, let's count macros. I ain't got time for that. It's too hard. So
it's very overwhelming, for sure.
Yes. And if you're trying to feed your kids, you don't have time to be counting calories. When I measure my food, I use my hand because I know exactly how large my hand is and how much food fits in the palm of my hand. So I measure my fruits and my vegetables with my hand because I know that my handful is half a cup. I know that when I pull something with my fingertips, it's a quarter of a cup. I know that when I'm eating leafy greens, I need 2 handfuls. So I keep it as simple as possible. And when I'm teaching parents, I teach them the same thing. So I can have mom or dad hold their hand up to mine. I can have a kid hold their hand up to mine. If their hand is the same size as mine, I can tell them this is what your serving sizes are if your hand is my size. So the basics to me are eat real food, cut out all the processed stuff, because the processed stuff has things that are, one, not going to help your immune system. So that means we get sicker easier. And I don't have time to be taking my nieces and nephews to the doctor if my sister or my brother ask me to. That means your kids are going to stay home from school. That means you're going to be home with them and you can't go to work. And none of us have time for it. So eat real food. That's the basics to me.
So you're trying your best to help your clients keep things very simple, take all the measurements, all the fad diets and all the craziness out of it, right? And just what are the simple steps you can do to keep yourself healthy? That's great.
Yes, I actually don't do fad diets. I've had clients come to me and tell me that they want to do a fad diet, and I won't do it. I don't believe in fad diets. They're supposed to be quick fixes, but they get you into more trouble than they actually help you. So like a keto diet, it makes you lose fat in the short term, but long term, it hurts your heart. It actually can create heart disease. So I won't do fad diets for people, and I won't help them put their health at risk.
That's a good way to think about it, and especially for people who are just trying to get, like you said, back to the basics and understand wellness and nutrition at a simplistic level that makes it doable, right? Because one thing about fad diets too is it's hard to keep up with. There's always new things on the market. There's always, I feel like a lot of companies use those diets to start producing more products. And then the more products and supplements there are, the more confusing it all gets. And you might be doing, like you said, you might be doing things for your body that aren't good. And when really your intention is just to help your body. So simple and basic, that's what we need.
Yes. Now, there are some supplements that we might need. Like, I take a vitamin when most vegetables and fruits aren't in season. So like during the winter and especially during respiratory season, I take a multivitamin. That's okay to do.
Yeah.
And my nieces and nephews do the same thing. But I mean, for my brother and sister and my friends and family, they have access to a dietitian. Yeah. Because they can just call me. And so I tell them what to do during different times. When I'm not eating as well and I know I'm not getting enough protein in and I'm drinking more, I'll drink a protein powder. I'll mix that and drink it. If I feel like I'm not getting enough protein in, that's okay to do. But I don't do these crazy things like creatine and all these other things that people drink and do, because those aren't healthy for your body. Your body produces things naturally and you don't need to do additives.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's really good information. The least amount of extra stuff that we can put in our bodies, the better off they are, because then they don't have to work as hard especially our liver, right? To flush those things. Our liver and our kidneys. Yeah.
Your liver and your kidney has to process everything you put into it and filter out all the bad stuff. So if you want to protect those and keep them working, keep it simple.
That's a perfect segue into the next question. you already mentioned processed foods and how it's best for people, especially children, to avoid those things. So can you give us some examples of what would be some clean strategies or some things to pick in the grocery store, and then some things to probably avoid or stay away from?
So the way grocery stores are set up, they generally put the fresher items, the less processed items, on the outer rims of stores, because those items usually have to be refrigerated or they need things like water. So your produce is always on the outside of your store because they usually have sprayers on them. So like if you go into something that has a refrigerator, it's on the outside because those need coolers. So when I walk into a store, I go get my produce first. So I walk straight to the produce section. I get all of my vegetables and my fruit. And then I generally don't buy very much meat because I try and do at least 1 to 2 meals a day without meat. But that's me personally. Some people don't do that. So like for breakfast, every day I don't eat meat.
Are you getting other sources of protein in, or you're just...
I do.
Okay.
So I don't count, some people do, some people don't. So I don't count eggs as a animal source of protein. I count it as, because I have vegetarian friends that eat eggs. So I say if a vegetarian doesn't count an egg as animal source of protein, then I don't. Because I have some very strict vegetarian friends. So I say if it's okay with my vegetarian friends, and it's okay with me as a non-animal source. So I'll eat an egg, or I'll eat like peanut butter. So, or like I like to put peanut butter in my oatmeal.
Yeah, it's really good.
So I'll make my oatmeal, and while it's still cooking, I'll put my peanut butter in and I'll let it get creamy and melt. It tastes really delicious.
Yeah, and I mean, children love peanut butter. Well, the ones that don't have allergies, which we'll get into later. But
if you have allergies, they make what's called sun butter, and it's actually made from what are they called? Sunflower seeds.
Okay.
And it's actually safe for children to eat. So if you have peanut butter and your children can eat almonds, they make almond butter. They make cashew butter. They make a ton of different varieties now. I don't have a peanut allergy, so I can eat peanut butter. The only nut I'm allergic to is unroasted macadamia nuts, which is very odd. Okay. Or I'll put things, I have pecan trees at home, so I'll eat pecans if I don't put peanut butter in my oatmeal, I'll put pecans. But I know exactly how much I need, and I make up for it throughout the day. So if I'm not going to eat meat at lunch, I'll do cheese, or I'll do tofu or hummus. There are other things you can eat and not eat meat.
Okay.
And vegetables have protein as well. Like if you want beans or legumes, those are a great source of protein. Yes, they're higher in carbs, but they're a great source of protein.
And when we're talking about children, we're not carb counting.
The only way you should be carb counting with a child is if they have diabetes.
Okay.
And you're having to correct for insulin.
Okay.
But most children, you're not correcting for insulin because children are extremely active.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to burn it off. They need those extra calories and the extra carbs. So,
yes. So then when I go in, so I get that if I need bread, and for me personally, I don't eat very much bread. I love me some avocado toast. Call me basic, but I love it. So an easy breakfast for me, I'll make 1 to 2 eggs, and I'll get 1 slice of toast and no more than a quarter of an avocado, a small one, not a large one, and put it on toast. And it sounds really basic, but I eat my avocado toast with my egg, and most of the time I'll put my egg on top because then it's just easier for me to eat. And then it sounds really weird, most of the time I drink water or hot tea. So it's not very uncommon for me to drink water with my breakfast.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's easy.
Yeah, and all of the things that you just mentioned are not processed. They're whole foods, real foods. That is a simple, basic. Even if you're doing oatmeal, and we have so many different varieties of milk, or if you have to, you can even put water in with your oatmeal, and you're good to go.
So if one thing that needs to be said is if I do dried fruit in my oatmeal, it's 1/4 of a cup. So I just use my fingertips and grab it up, because dried fruit, you remove all the water from it, so the serving size is smaller than regular fruit.
Okay.
So it's half the serving size, because it does have more sugar because there's not the water in it.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
So if I do put dried fruit in it, I do put less than I would say berries, because I do like to put berries into my oatmeal.
Okay.
And so that's just a really easy, basic breakfast. A lot of times when I'm making eggs, I'll put spinach in my eggs, because then I get vegetables in my breakfast. And it's easy to do that.
So what would be a tip for you for these little ones that don't want green things in their eggs?
You can hide it. So chop it up really small. And then one way that we hide it with my nephew, because he says, I don't need vegetables, they look weird, is we chop it up really small. Then I tell him I'm making cheesy eggs because he loves cheese. And then I make him a burrito.
Nice.
And because he loves ketchup, I put a little bit of ketchup on it, and he never sees them.
That's great.
And he thinks he's just eating a burrito with ketchup on it and cheesy eggs. Yeah. I don't put a lot of ketchup, just a little bit, just enough to hide it.
Yeah. Because of
And then I can put, so what I'll do with that is I'll put really finely cut up spinach or diced spinach, and then I'll chop up usually peppers, so bell peppers, and he never knows they're in there, because I saute the peppers first and then throw in the spinach and the eggs and make cheesy eggs, and he thinks it's the best thing in the world.
So hide in those vegetables.
Yes.
Yeah.
We hide them in eggs, we hide them in spaghetti sauce, we hide them in his rice.
Yeah.
He never knows what he's eating.
When they don't know what's in there, they're going to eat it up.
Yes. He thinks that he's just eating his rice, and we just do what we do. And he'll openly eat his green beans, but he has no idea that there's other stuff in his food.
That's a great way to do it. That's a great tip for parents, is to chop things up really small and put it in. I like your idea about putting it into sauces like spaghetti sauce, or any other kind of like soup or sauce, because
I even hide them in baked goods.
Oh, that's a good idea too. What would be an example?
I made them muffins the other day, my nieces and nephews, and they had no idea that in the muffins I made them, there was carrots and zucchini.
Yeah, that's perfect.
They knew there were bananas in there, but they had no idea about the others.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's a great tip. So getting back to the clean eating, and so you said to stay around the perimeters of the grocery store.
So in the shelves that are on the inside, I mean, obviously things like rice and beans and peanut butter stuff are going to be on the inside, but so are all of your other processed foods. So things with high sugar, so your candy, your cereals with marshmallows and a lot of sugar in them, all of those things are on the inside on the shelves. Your Twinkies. Don't buy Twinkies. To me, they personally don't even taste good. Some of the other stuff tastes good to me, but I personally just say don't eat them. All of your cookies, everything is in there. So if you can avoid it, don't buy it.
Okay. What is if I picked up, let's not use Twinkies as an example, because we all know Twinkies aren't very healthy, but if I was looking for say cereal, and I know, no marshmallows, whatever else, what are some things that I would want to look for or watch out for in the ingredient label?
So you want the least number of ingredients, because the more ingredients on something means the more they've added to it.
Okay.
So if something has less ingredients on it, that means they've added less things on it to make it taste good. And then also if it has sugar higher on the list, it means they've added it sooner into it. And it probably has more of it.
Okay.
So when you look at the nutrition label, you also want less sugar in it. Less sugar, less sodium, because sodium is salt.
Okay. And I've noticed now, one of the podcasts I was listening to talked about how they have to put not just your sugars, but your added sugars on the label now. And that's mind blowing. That's something that I've been looking at when I purchase products. So not only, you have what the sugar content is, but then when you look at how much they've put in, that means that the product naturally had, say, 5 grams of sugar, but then they possibly added another 9 grams if it says added sugars, right? So
yes, so you want the least amount of number of grams of added sugar. Okay. Because things like, so if they dehydrated strawberries and put it into the cereal, the strawberries naturally have sugar in it. So that's natural sugar, so it's going to have it. But if they've added more sugar to the cereal, so if they've coated the cereal flakes in sugar, that's added sugar.
Gotcha.
You don't want it. So like if you're going to buy Cheerios, regular Cheerios are going to be better than the honey coated ones, because the honey coated ones are going to have a honey coating on them, meaning that's more sugar. You want the plain ones, if possible. So,
that being said, for some of these parents that might be listening might have children who are used to a higher sugar content, and we're trying to back them away from that. So if plain Cheerios is kind of a big hit or a big stretch right away, and they wanted to add a little bit of flavor at home, say with regular honey that you have at home, is that better than buying the Honey Nut Cheerios per se?
It can be, because then you can control what you're putting in.
Okay.
And you can start cutting back.
Okay.
Just don't go overboard.
Okay.
Because honey is actually, the content of honey, the sugar content is higher than regular sugar, but people think it's better because it's naturally derived sugar.
Right.
So it's a higher content, it's just sweeter than regular sugar because there is more sugar in it.
And you would definitely want to use raw, unpasteurized honey because they don't add sugar. Am I correct with that?
So you want to use natural sugar. You don't necessarily have to use raw sugar. Raw sugar is really good for people who have allergies because they don't take the pollen out of it.
Okay.
So for all of my allergy kids out there, all the parents listening to this, and even if you're a teenager listening to this, if you can get raw honey, especially if it's from your local farmer, get raw because it'll help with your allergies. So like I use raw honey in my tea every night and every morning because it helps with my seasonal allergies because I'm allergic to earth.
Oh my gosh. So, some people are. We'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yes.
But
if you can't find raw honey from your local farmer's market, it's okay to get regular honey, but try and find natural honey, not the one that you find just at Walmart in the regular section, because that probably is more processed and probably has more added sugar to it. And it's probably not pure honey.
Okay. So that being said, since we dove into the topic of other sweeteners, I know right now, I mean, it's something that overwhelms me. However, I don't like all of these different sweeteners, so I just stay away from them. But there are a lot of different things on the market, and it can be kind of confusing and overwhelming too, because, there's the raw sugar, there's coconut sugar, there's honey, there's stevia, there's all of these different types of sweeteners. Are any of those better or worse? Are some more processed than the others? What is your take on other sweeteners?
So any of the non-sugar sugars Like your Sweet and Low, your stevia, all of the ones that are processed are made chemically. I mean, stevia is made from monk fruit, but any of those, please don't give them to your children. Your children don't need them. Even adults don't need them. Just don't use them.
Okay.
It's your kidneys and your liver still have to filter those out. So if you don't need it, I personally don't drink any of that or use any of it, eat any of it. I don't eat very much sugar, so I'm a dietitian, so people can say, well, it's because you're a dietitian. I drink water and tea. But every once in a while, I do drink a soda. To me, because I've spent so long not eating and drinking this stuff, it tastes overly sweet to me.
Yeah.
So you can retrain your body not to eat and drink that stuff or crave that stuff. But I personally say to use real stuff. So white sugar to me is worse than raw sugar if you're going to put it into your drinks. For baking and cooking, sometimes you have to use white processed sugar because of how recipes are made. So I can't use raw sugar when I'm making cookies.
What about like coconut sugar though, or some of the other substitutes that are out there?
They're sugar. They're just made from different things.
Okay.
But when you're using them, the equivalents can be different.
Okay.
So if a recipe calls for white processed regular cane sugar, the mill of it, so the texture of it, can be different than coconut sugar. So you have to look at the grit on it to see if the equivalent for the measurements would be the same.
Okay.
So, like my parents they use honey in their coffee. One, because they like the taste, and two, because it means they don't have to use as much.
Right.
Because they're trying to cut out all sugar, all processed sugar from their diet. Because I made them. Wink, wink. So, and then if they're gonna, like in the sugar bowl, they have raw sugar. So because my dad lived in Hawaii for 3 years and he lived near a cane sugar farm. So there, all they use is raw cane sugar. And so he got used to using that instead of the white processed sugar.
Yeah.
So now that's what my parents have in their sugar bowl when people want sugar, because it's just what they got used to.
And in essence, I mean, going back to the basics, right? So the less that something is processed, the less chemicals that are in it or that it's made from, the more organic, the better off you are. So getting back to some of the clean eating strategies that you talked about, or that you were talking to us about, and you said to stay around the perimeter of the grocery store. Can you touch on, if things aren't in season, what are some good substitutes? Like, are frozen products, fruits and vegetables, good, just as good?
So the way I tell people to do this is that canned and frozen are perfectly okay if you can't find items in the fresh produce section, because when items are frozen and canned, they are picked at the peak freshness from the farm, and then they are they're usually flash frozen and processed, so that way they stay in that form. So if you're going to buy canned items, you want your vegetables, you want them packed in water with no salt added. And then if it's fruit, you want them packed in their own juice.
Okay, no added sugars.
No added sugar. It's very important, no added sugar, packed in their own fruit, in their own juice.
Okay.
And then for frozen's actually perfect, especially right now with everything going on with the scare, because right now people can't find a lot of vegetables in the produce section because people have wiped them out.
Yeah.
So right now you can buy frozen and stock your freezer, and it'll last you the entire time. If they put us on a full quarantine, you'll have produce for your children, for your family, and it'll last you.
And so when
usually usually a frozen bag of vegetables has at least 4 servings in it. So that could feed an entire family for an entire meal. So like for me, I'm single, so a bag of vegetables, if I'm eating a meatless meal, that's 2 meals. If I'm eating meat with my meal, or I should say protein with another source of protein with my meal, that's 4 meals from 1 bag of vegetables. So with those, you want to get something that doesn't have a sauce.
That was going to be my question. Okay.
And no salt added to it.
Okay.
Because you can find just vegetables in that section. And they even you can find the spiraled vegetables that you can substitute as spaghetti or other noodles.
Awesome.
Which kids actually like.
That's awesome.
My nephew that doesn't like vegetables because they look weird will eat them.
Again, it's sneaking it in there, right? Finding creative ways to get them to try things. That's awesome.
And he likes them because they jingle. Because he can pick them up and move them.
Yeah, I mean, I know we, especially when we were growing up, we were encouraged not to play with our food, and we definitely don't want to encourage that. But when there's fun or creative things that they can see or do, and when things are colorful on their plates and they get used to that and it looks appetizing, that really helps, right? That helps them try things.
Kids are still kids. They like color. I always tell people to eat the rainbow, but not Skittles all the time. Because every single color on a food gives you a different variety of nutrients. And I actually created a post about this on my Instagram and my Facebook. So
awesome.
Insert little blurb here.
Yeah.
But every single color gives you different micronutrients. Because every single food gives you nutrients. And that's what I try and tell people is an orange, it gives you vitamin C, right? But the orange color is a nutrient. Just like a red food is a nutrient. And a purple food is. And a blue food. And a green food. So every single color gives you a different nutrient. And people need to keep that in mind. Kids learn through touch. They learn through taste. They learn through their senses.
Yes.
So get your kids in the kitchen. Let them help you. Especially if you have picky eaters, they want some control over something. So give them an option between 2 vegetables. Which vegetable do you want today for dinner, son, daughter, whoever? Little Bobby, little Jane. Pick one. You had the control of giving them an option between 2. But they felt powerful and like a big kid because they got to pick which one you eat for dinner.
And then they're more likely to try it because they're the ones that chose it. Like you said, it's giving them some control.
You can even do something like what we do with my nieces and nephews is we let them help us set the table. So Grayson, who is 3, he goes and he gets all the napkins for everybody. So we're working on counting with him. So he counts how many people are there, and he gets the napkins, and he gets spoons for everybody. If you're an adult, you even get a spoon, because Grayson gets spoons. Okay. His sisters, we get the plates down. When the kids are sitting at tables, we use paper plates for the adults, because then they're not going to break a plate. And his oldest sister puts plates down, or his middle sister puts plates down, and place settings. And then his oldest sister, we hand her the child forks when she's at each setting, and she puts a fork down for each of the kids, and then she puts an adult fork down. So that way they're involved with stuff, and they know that they got to help.
Yeah, making them part of the routine.
Yes, then we tell them they know that there are no phones and no TV at dinner because it's a distraction. So there was one day that I was doing something for the business, and I had my phone, and my niece actually looked over at me and she said, "Auntie, there's no phones at dinner time." And I said, "Baby, you're right. I need to put this away." And then her brother did something that would have been perfect for me to record because I got him to try broccoli. But,
yeah,
there are no phones. So I missed a perfect opportunity. But, you know,
but it's distracting.
There are rules at our dinner table.
Yeah, and that's important too, because, you know, I think sometimes parents want their children to, they want to make mealtime fun. And so, you know, it's easy to put on a show or a YouTube video or a song or something, but it really is distracting, and children are easily distracted. So like 1 minute they're hungry, but if you miss that window and they're distracted by something, then they don't realize they're still hungry and they might not want to eat, and then it gets more difficult as you go.
Well, and everyone is so busy that if you only have 30 minutes to eat, if you put something on for them to watch, they're going to spend 20 minutes of that watching it.
Yeah.
And then they only have 10 minutes to eat, and you're going to be frustrated because you don't have to do homework and everything else. And I tell parents, with those frozen vegetables, they take 5 minutes to cook in the microwave. And if you undercook them, the back of the package, I think, says 7 minutes to cook them. Only cook them 5. Because if you cook them according to the package, they will get soggy. And your kids aren't going to eat them. Helpful tip for the day.
Yeah, because they stay cooking. I mean, they're warm, so once you've removed them, they stay cooking. So, that being said, when I'm putting together my child's plate, what are the main categories? Like, what would I want to see for a well-balanced plate for, let's say, like a 3 to 5-year-old?
So what I do is I cut the plate into quarters. So I do a quarter of fruits, a quarter of vegetables, a quarter of a starch, and then a quarter of protein.
Awesome.
So one thing is, if you're going to do beans, you need to do rice within the same week. Because beans and rice are incomplete proteins on their own, but they create a complete protein together and give your child all the nutrients that, say, beef would, or chicken, or pork. So together they give your child all of the nutrients that they need to be building blocks to create protein. Okay.
So if your child won't eat meat and they'll eat beans, you want to make sure they get a serving in of rice.
Within the same week,
Within the week, okay. Does it matter, I mean, do you have a preference? White rice, brown rice, jasmine rice? There's so many choices.
Honestly, brown rice is better only because the outer shelling of it is not removed in the processing process. Processing process, that sounds odd.
But I get what you mean.
It has more nutrients in it.
Okay.
Because it's less processed.
Okay.
So if your child will eat brown rice or long grain rice, it's better than white processed rice because it's bleached.
Okay.
So regular white rice is bleached and processed.
Okay.
But if that's all your child will eat, it's okay.
Okay.
And quite honestly, I feel like brown rice tastes better because it has a nutty flavor to it. So just, if you're wanting to try something new, your child might like that because it just has a nuttier flavor to it. Especially if you put it in a pan and you kind of put it over flames, it roasts it a little bit and brings out the flavor more.
Awesome. Now, so you mentioned fruits, vegetables, starch, and protein. Do you add any fats into that, like some butter into the rice or into the vegetables or anything like that?
Yes. So my brother-in-law always puts just a little bit of butter on the kids' vegetables, and sometimes even their rice, just depending on the day. Or sometimes he'll just give them some avocado. My nephews, my brother's twins, will just eat avocado because they live that avocado life.
Would that be considered their vegetable, or is that in addition to, because it's more fat-based?
So my brother's nephews will just eat avocado by itself, and they don't necessarily do that with anything. So sometimes they just eat it on their own, and it's just a little addition to their plate. But you don't have to count fat as anything because most kids drink milk, and milk has fat in it. So, but up until the age of 5, your child should be drinking whole milk. which has fat in it. And your kid is going to be getting fat throughout the day in all of their foods.
Okay.
So they don't necessarily need a source of fat because anything we eat is going to have fat in it.
Okay.
But if you want to give your kid avocado, by all means do it. If you want to put just a little bit, not a lot. A pat of butter is a serving of butter. Your kid does not need a pat of butter.
Okay.
It's just like no more than my pinky to put in their vegetables and their rice.
Okay. And that's only if they won't eat it without it, right? But they don't
Yes.
need an extra source of fat.
They don't.
Okay.
And sometimes you do it just for flavor.
Yeah, just to like
Just like with
entice them a little.
adults. Yes, sometimes with adults you put just a little bit of butter in your rice.
Yeah.
Just because sometimes you want a little extra.
Well, and I mean, when we're talking adults too, you know, there's different things that we're measuring in terms of what our bodies need throughout the day and stuff too. But for children, I think it was a good thing I wanted to bring up to see, like, here's how simple the meal can be, and here's a little bit of things that you can add for flavor or for the extra, like you said,
Yes.
without going overboard. Especially when children are trying to make the transition from more processed foods, because more processed foods have more quote unquote flavor, and not necessarily good flavor, but more, additives to them. And so if a child's used to that higher flavor profile that's not organic or natural, it might be a difficult transition to just start eating broccoli and rice.
It will be one.
Yeah.
It will be difficult to switch to a less processed diet, but it doesn't have to be difficult if you have the right guidance.
Right. Which is why you're here. So
Yes.
we appreciate that. So, let me see. We've touched on a lot of good things. One thing that I really want to talk about is food allergies, and what are some signs and symptoms that parents can look out for that tells them their child has an intolerance to something or might be allergic to something.
So I don't personally have kids, like I said, but I have 5 nieces and nephews, and 3 currently suffer from food allergies or intolerances. 1 outgrew them, but I'm also plagued with food allergies, but they're not that dramatic. I don't need an EpiPen or anything for them. So luckily, I know what to look out for just because of my experiences and because I've been around a lot of kids that have food allergies. So people automatically, when they hear allergy, they dive to rashes, hives, difficulty breathing, and EpiPens.
So like more
I said,
severe.
Yeah, they automatically dive to anaphylactic shock, but like I said, it doesn't all have to be that dramatic, so let's calm down, take a breath. So what do parents have to look out for? Drainage. It's boogers. It's not an easy way to say it. Does your kid always have a lot of boogers when they eat the same thing? So its easiest way to figure this out is to keep a journal. If you think your child might be suffering from either food allergy or intolerance, I really urge parents to start writing things down. So if you notice that every time little Johnny eats or drinks milk, that they get a lot of boogers, and maybe they're getting really swollen, especially on their face and their limbs and their belly, or they're starting to get a really fine rash that looks like heat rash on their face, their chest, and their arms, usually the upper arm. I usually get mine on from about my elbow up to my the top of my arm. It usually stops right where my arm meets my shoulder.
Okay.
It always goes there. It's usually on one arm more than the other. And then things like either diarrhea or constipation. Obviously, farting, GI upset.
Yeah.
So things like that, if you notice that always happens when they eat one thing, or a lot of just pain and discomfort when they're trying to use the restroom, especially what my nieces and nephews call going stinky. Write it down. Keep a log of it, because when you go to the doctor, you can say, look, this is what's happening. And then try cutting it out of their diet. Now, if it's a baby and it's an infant and you're giving them formula, you can't just cut formula out of your baby's diet.
Right.
Because that's their only source of food. You have to go see a doctor immediately if you're noticing things.
Okay.
But if you're noticing these things, then you have to do it. But if you think your child's having an allergy, stay away from strawberries during this, because strawberry is a natural histamine and it will make things worse.
Okay, so even if you think they're having an intolerance or an allergy to, say, dairy products, you want to refrain from dairy and strawberries because that can make the dairy allergy worse?
It can make the reaction worse.
The reaction worse, okay.
Because strawberries are a natural histamine, and like when we take allergy medicine, it's an antihistamine.
Right. So strawberries do the reverse.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's just things to keep in mind. So I wrote down things specifically, and I'm going to make sure I read it all to you correctly.
Okay.
For this one. So it's the boogers. A lot of times kids, and this was specifically, if I can speak correctly today, what my niece did, she would actually refuse to take her bottles because she's allergic to casein in whey. She would refuse to take her bottles, so she would actually spit them out. We knew she was hungry because she hadn't eaten in, let's say, 4 hours, and it was time for her bottle, and she would spit it out and refuse to take it. Or she would drink maybe an ounce of it and then spit it out. And then she might, when it came time to burp, if she drank any of it, she would kind of like projectile vomit it out. So
that was her body's natural, yeah.
Yes, her body knew, I don't need this, it's not good for me, I need to get it out.
Right.
And then she looked extremely swollen, and once we found out that she was allergic to it, and it got out of her system, her face, all the swelling went down, and she actually was very like lean in comparison to what she looked like.
Yeah, and it's, inflammation, and you mentioned boogers, and those kinds of things, like overproduction of mucus is your body's immune response, and so is inflammation, right? Your body's trying to fight something off or protect itself. So those are all things that we should look for as signs of possible food allergies.
So the reason your body overproduces that mucus is because it's trying to line and coat your intestines to protect it, the little epithelial that are in your intestines that are supposed to absorb your nutrients. Because if those get damaged, you can't absorb nutrients.
Yeah, that's
so cool. Like for a baby and even for a toddler, if mom and dad take them to go to the restroom, they might notice a lot of mucus or what looks like boogers in their feces.
Okay. That's all important stuff. Because I know,
even if they don't see the boogers in their nose, they might notice it that way.
Yeah, in their bowels. This is really an important, I wanted to touch on this before we wrap things up, because, we are seeing children who have a lot more intolerances or food allergies, or even adults that are starting to realize they can't have certain things. So I just want our parents to know, start looking for these signs. And I love your tip of keeping a food journal, because it collects data, right? And it gives you kind of the whole picture of what things could be causing problems. So that's great advice. So you mentioned that you have an Instagram and a Facebook account that people can follow you. What is the name of your Instagram or your Facebook?
My Facebook is literally the business name. It's Bare Nutrition LLC. And then my business one is the same thing. It's Bare Nutrition LLC.
Awesome.
Yes. So both handles are the same.
Great. So we can send our listeners your way so they can follow you and reach out to you. Now, you do consultations, and right now you're in Las Cruces and I'm here in Albuquerque, and we're doing this over FaceTime. And I know with all this craziness with coronavirus, everybody's looking into teletherapy and consulting over digital devices. Is this something that you probably will be adopting in the future?
It's something that I've actually done. So I'm licensed to practice in the state of New Mexico and Texas, and then the state of Arizona and also Michigan and New Jersey don't require me to have state licenses, but I am nationally certified, so I can practice in 5 states. So for Texas, I can do telehealth, and then New Jersey, Arizona, and Michigan. And then I can practice currently in New Mexico, so I can see patients in New Mexico, but for anywhere outside of Las Cruces, I would have to do telehealth. But outside of right now with the scare, your insurance might not cover telehealth, so you would have to pay out of pocket. And I'm in the process of trying to get insurances to allow me to go through their network.
That's so awesome. Well, we'll definitely keep our families up to date with your progress on that and ways that they can get a hold of you. But we'll put information about your Facebook, your Instagram, and ways that they can follow you and get those tips, and even ask you questions or connect with you that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Any last thing you want to add? Did I miss anything?
Just stay safe out there. Please wash your hands. I'm going to try and do this with my nieces and nephews, but I'm going to try and do a video on washing hands, because I actually used to teach hand washing techniques and hand washing safety. So I'm going to try and do that and put that on my Instagram. It may have to be an Instagram Live, so it might not be able to go on my Facebook. I'll have to do a separate video for that, but I'm going to try and do that so that people do that, because I actually used to have to scrub to go into an OR, so my hand washing is more thorough than what most people do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and do that to really show people how to properly wash their hands.
That's awesome. I'll keep an eye for that and post that information too. We did a video with our kids this week about washing hands, when to wash our hands. So.
And also, if you're using hand sanitizer, the rule of thumb is you can only use hand sanitizer 3 times before you have to wash your hands.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Everyone's getting crazy with the hand sanitizer, and it's like, sometimes that overusing it, like you said, is not very good for our immune system as well. So that's a whole other topic. Okay, I'm going to stop now.